Before you start uploading a particular video to YouTube, it's important to optimize that video to make sure it's the highest quality video possible. Let's go over some techniques and strategies that you can use to optimize your videos. Before actually uploading your videos to YouTube, one of the first tips that I have is to use a video editing program. YouTube has some video editing features built in, but they still don't compare to the features offered in third-party programs. There are a number of programs that you can use, but here's a short list of some of the ones that I recommend. You could use iMovie, Windows Movie Maker, ScreenFlow, Camtasia, Adobe Premiere Pro, or Final Cut Pro. If you're just starting out, I'd recommend either using iMovie or Windows Movie Maker. iMovie is going to be if you're using a Mac computer, and Windows Movie Maker is going to be if you're using Windows. If you're doing screen recording, I would recommend using either ScreenFlow for Mac, which is actually my favorite of all of these, or Camtasia for Windows. When you get into advanced video editing, you may want to move up to Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere Pro. One of the first things to think about before uploading a video is editing out any mistakes that you can find in the video. If you're speaking to the camera, you want to avoid using the ums and so's as much as possible. When you go to edit your video, you may be able to get some of those out, but you don't want to overdo it because you want your video to sound natural. If you think it's going to be distracting to the viewer, it's a good idea to edit out those small interjectory words. It's also important to edit out any long pauses. Earlier in the course, I talked about being efficient in your videos and getting to the point as soon as possible. If you have 15 seconds of dead silence in your video, go ahead and just edit it out. It'll get to the point quicker and the user will like it better. You also might want to think about taking multiple shots when you shoot your video. Even if you're comfortable with the first shot you take, you might want to go ahead and take a second shot and then compare the two. Maybe you can even edit the two together. If you're going to be speaking to the camera, you might want to try videos that are scripted, where you have everything that you need to say right in front of you. And then you can also try videos that are unscripted, where you're just flowing using bullet points or some notes. You can then compare the final videos and see which strategy works best for you. When you're editing your videos before uploading, it's important to take a look at your sound levels. You want to make sure that your sound levels are consistent, so you don't want your video to be really loud in the beginning and then very quiet at the end. As a whole, you don't want your video to be too loud or too quiet. Make sure that in that video editing program that you're using, that you're listening to your audio before you upload it to YouTube. It's a good idea to add a branded intro and outro to your video before you upload it to YouTube as well. So at the very beginning of your video, maybe the first 3 seconds, you can have your logo slide in and appear on the screen. So everybody sees the brand and hopefully it gets embedded in their mind. And then in the last few seconds, you might have your logo come in again. This is especially important if you're using YouTube for marketing. When you're creating and optimizing your videos, it's important to think about the viewer. One of the primary considerations you should have is the viewer's time, so make sure that you're getting to the point. Also, make sure that your video is short and sweet. That's always a good thing. It's also important not to make any assumptions about what the viewer does or doesn't already know. For instance, you don't want to say, well, since none of you know about the best export settings for YouTube, here's a list of what YouTube recommends. Because you might have viewers that do know the best export settings for YouTube, and they might be offended by your choice of words and assuming that they don't know. Instead, you could rephrase it and say, I know that some of you might know what the best export settings for YouTube are, but in case you don't, here's a list of what YouTube recommends. That way, you're not isolating the people that do know, and you're still providing the right information for the people that don't know. That being said, when you get to the point of actually exporting your video and uploading it to YouTube, it's important to use YouTube's recommended export settings. So let's take a look at some of them. This information is also part of the checklist in the exercise files for this course. For the file type, YouTube recommends an MP4. The audio codec that YouTube recommends is AAC-LC. YouTube's recommended video codec is H.264. YouTube has a number of recommended resolutions as well. The resolution of your video is really the graphical quality of your video that you upload to YouTube. So here's what YouTube recommends. You can upload videos that have a lower resolution than 720p, but I wouldn't recommend it. 720p and above is considered high definition. With the internet speeds that we have nowadays, it doesn't take very long to upload a 720p video, and the quality is just going to be much, much better. When you upload an HD video, YouTube will create compressed versions of that video as well. So for instance, if I upload a 1080p video, the maximum quality available to the viewer will be 1080p. But if they have a very slow internet connection, a 480p and a 360p version will be available to them. However, if you upload a 360p video, videos of higher quality will not be available to that user. So YouTube will scale it down, but it won't scale it up. So like I said, I recommend 720p or above. If you use most of these recommendations, you should be uploading high quality videos to YouTube in no time.